Hello and welcome back to the official YouTube channel of Anastasis Academy, ladies and gentlemen. We are at the 11th episode of Bibliophile, a series wherein we take up articles and blogs and essays from all across the internet and discuss with you. So let's get started. So today's essay is How to Take Risks by Mark Manson. The link to the original essay would be given to you in the comment section, sorry, in the description box, and you can go to the original essay and give it a read. So here goes. When I was young, anytime my family got a new VCR or stereo, I would press every button, plug and unplug every cord and cable just to see what everything did. With time, I learned how it all worked, and because I knew how it all worked, I was often the only person in the house who would use the stuff. Like many millennial children, people born in the mid 80s, early 90s, millennial. Like many millennial children, my parents looked on as if I were some sort of prodigy. Prodigy means a specially talented person. Talented or skilled. To them, the fact that I could program the VCR without looking at the instruction manual made me the second coming of Tesla. So, Second Coming is a poem by William Butler Yeats, which talks about the reincarnation of Jesus Christ in today's world. So, the parents were so awestruck with this phenomenon of the author that they thought that it is the second coming of Tesla. They would shake their heads and guffaw. Guffaw is loud laughter and say, how do you use that thing? And I just kind of shrug is this, and not really understand the question. There are buttons, you press them and see what happens. Eventually, you learn to press the right ones. That is the beauty of innocence, That is the beauty of curiosity and wonder. It's easy to look back at my parents' generation and chuckle at their technophobia. Technophobia is fear of technology. Fear of technology. But the further I get into adulthood, the more I realize that we all have areas of our lives where we are like my parents with the new VCR. We sit and stare and shake our heads and say, but how? When really it's as simple as just doing it. I get emails from people asking questions like this all the time. And for many years, I never knew what to do, what to say to them. There's the girl whose parents are immigrants and saved for their whole lives to put her through med school. But now she's in med school and she hates it and doesn't want to spend her life as a doctor and wants to drop out more than anything. She feels stuck. So stuck that she ends up emailing a stranger on the internet and asking him a silly and obvious question like, how do I drop out of med school? So the author is getting emails like this. This is the first example the author has taken to drive home the point. First example. Second example, or the college guy who has a crush on his tutor and who is a grad student, and he can't possibly imagine crossing those invisible boundaries that lay between them. So he agonizes over every sign, every laugh, every smile, every diversion into small talk. Emails me 28-page novella that concludes with the obvious and silly question, how do I ask her out? Second example. Or the single mother whose kids have dropped out of school and they're loafing around, wasting time, not doing anything productive, right? Who are loafing around on her couch, eating her food, spending her money, not respecting her space or her desire for privacy. She wants them to move on with their lives. She wants to move on with her life. Yet she's scared to death of pushing her children away, scared to the point of asking, how do I ask them to move out? Third example. So these are the emails that the author talked about. I get emails from all kinds of people. So the med school girl, the boy who couldn't ask his tutor out, and this mother of a single mother who cannot ask her children to move out because it's time to fly away from the nest. These are VCR questions. So clearly, the author has drawn an analogy. Analogy is when you are trying to find parallels between two situations. From the outside, the answer is simple, just shut up and do it. But from the inside, from the perspectives of each of these people, these questions feel impossibly complex and opaque. Opaque is unclear. Light does not pass through. Opposite of transparent. Existential riddles, wrapped in enigmas, enigmas as in mysteries. Packed in a KFC bucket full of Rubik's cubes. Rubik's cubes are those cubes that you play with. You know, you have to get all the colors on the same surface, all the red together, all the yellow together, all the green together, all the blue together, like that. So the author is clearly drawing a distinction between the extrinsic way of looking at it and the intrinsic way of looking at it, which is much more complex. So there is a comparison in this paragraph. And the author is very high on giving parallels and analogies. This is a metaphor. These are existential riddles wrapped in enigmas, packed in a KFC bucket full of Rubik's cubes. This is a metaphor, a comparison. VCR questions are funny because they appear difficult to anyone who has them and they appear easy to anyone who does not. The problem here is our emotions. The problem here is our emotions, you know. Filing out the appropriate paperwork to drop out of med school is a straightforward and obvious action. If you want to drop out, just do it. Breaking your parents' hearts is not. That's the problematic area. That's not as straightforward as we would like it to be, because, you know, you think that they have done so much for you and they have saved up all their lives to send you to med school, and now you are just going to go and crush their dreams. It's not easy. Asking a tutor out on a date is as simple as saying the words, "Would you like to go out with me?" But risking intense embarrassment and rejection feels far more complicated. Asking someone to move out of your house is a clear decision. I don't want you around. But feeling as if you are abandoning your own children is not. So, emotions. That's the problem. I struggled with social anxiety, the author admits. Throughout much of my adolescence and young adult life, I spent most of my days distracting myself with video games and most of my nights either drinking or smoking away my uneasiness. For many years, the thought of speaking to a stranger, especially if that stranger happened to be particularly attractive, interesting, popular, smart, felt impossible to me. I walked around in a daze as in a state of confusion for years, asking dumb VCR questions to myself. How? So the metaphor of VCR is pretty prominent in the course of the text. How do you just walk up and talk to a person? How can somebody just do that? I had all sorts of screwed up beliefs about this, like you weren't allowed to speak to someone unless you had some practical reason to. Or that woman would think I was creepy, I was a creepy rapist if I so much as said hello. The problem was that my emotions defined my reality, according to Mark, the author. Because it felt like people didn't want to talk to me, I came to believe that people didn't want to, because it felt like people didn't want to talk to me, I came to believe that people didn't want to talk to me. And thus, my VCR question, how do you talk to somebody? Because I failed to separate what I felt from what was the reality and the illusion. The reality of the things and the illusion of the things. I was incapable of stepping outside of myself and seeing the world for what it was, a simple place where two people can walk up to each other at any time and speak. I would not think of it as such a straightforward scenario. Risk taking and emotional roadblocks. The author continues, I have written at length before about how unreliable our own minds often are. Unreliable own minds. Who do you rely on then? We have so many perceptual biases based on perspectives, biases that are based on perspectives, and mental inefficiencies going on. It's a wonder we can handle heavy machinery. I don't know. The author is saying that I don't know how we deal with heavy machinery. And because of these perceptual inaccuracies, I have written about how we must be careful in judging others and not accept beliefs without some degree of skepticism. This is important. Being careful in judging others, that is one point the author is making. And the second one is not accept beliefs without some questioning. Skepticism is some level of doubt. Just because something has been handed over to you, no, you don't have to take it. You don't have to agree. You don't have to accept immediately, wholeheartedly in your naivety. But our emotions are just as unreliable as our brains. Our heart is just as capable of misleading us as our head. Just because something feels bad, it doesn't mean that it is bad. Just because something feels scary, it does not mean that it is scary. Just because someone feels like a self-absorbed douche canoe is a person, self-absorbed jerk. Douche canoe does not mean that they are a self-absorbed douche canoe. It is a slang, by the way. Too often we allow ourselves to be dictated by our emotions. We become fused with them. We are them. It's so ingrained in us. It's a part of our language. We say, I am scared instead of I feel scared. See, so this is where the author is talking about the importance of language. We relate to our emotions so much that we don't say, I am feeling scared. We say, I am scared. We identify it with the self, the concept of self so deeply. We say, you are me. Instead of it feels like you're being me, we identify both ourselves and each other with our emotions, with no separation between us, and we therefore unconsciously come to see our emotions as both our identity and our destiny. This is important. On the mission of make your life suck less. This is a DEFCON 1 level problem. So the author talks about, once again, this is a DEFCON 1 level problem. Buying wholesale into our emotions without skepticism, without cross examination, provokes an insidious narcissism. Insidious is something that is hidden and not a good thing, hidden and evil. Narcissism within us. The person who is forever obsessed with their own feelings and satisfaction is a person who's unable to look outside themselves, a person who's unable to take on the perspectives and feelings of others as their own, a person who is unable to hold values beyond their own credit and gain. So the author draws a very negative image in order to talk about those people who just believe, without skepticism. Um, DEFCON 1 level problem. DEFCON 1 level problem is like the ultimate readiness for the final readiness that you are capable of for a nuclear war. That is the intensity of this issue. How to make your life suck less. So, buying wholesale into our emotions without skepticism and cross examination, when we do this, it provokes an insidious narcissism within us. Narcissism is being self absorbed, being self obsessed. So when we do this, we become narcissistic. The person who's forever obsessed with their own feelings and satisfaction. Constantly, we are like, what am I feeling? What is my satisfaction? A person who's unable to look outside themselves, right? And person who's unable to take on the perspectives and feelings of others as their own. So people who cannot empathize. Hmm? And a person who's unable to hold value beyond their own credit and gains, to their profit, their loss. These are the people who actually become narcissistic and who cannot get out of their own shells, who cannot see what others are going through, others' feelings, a person who cannot get over um, ideas of loss and gain, personal loss and gain. Our culture reinforces this subtle form of selfishness. We have support. If we behave like this, we have support. This constant identification with feelings and wantings to feel better. But feeling better is not necessarily being better. We know that. This fallacy is present in our advertisements, in our political speeches, in our films and literature, in our self help industry. If you feel bad, then it is bad. If you feel good, then it is good. Is that the case? You feel good after eating a pizza, but is it good for you? Go with your intuition, listen to your gut, follow your heart, live for today. That's the problem with popular culture. These cliches as in overused phrases, it's a French word, pollute our mind space and limit us to the simple and small projects of our overall being. They reduce us to merely what we feel, ignoring all that we are. You may feel anger at your mother, but that anger does not define your relationship with her. You may feel anxious about making a change in your life, but that anxiety does not define your life. You may feel guilty about asserting your boundaries, but that guilt does not define who you are or who you choose to become. So, the author has, just to draw the essence of the entire selection, the author begins with the his childhood, the VCR example, wherein he was curious and he thought it is very normal and deliberate thing to, you know, just push some buttons, see how it works. But other people around him were like, "How are you doing it?" And then he goes on to talk about how strangers reach out to him when they feel stuck in their lives and when they're not able to take those decisions which are kind of social or personal or emotional risks, you know. Finally, the author says that, well, uh, not finally, penultimately, the author says that, well, taking risks looks easy from the outside, but the actual problem is emotions. It's not the action, it's about what goes within that action or what goes along with that action. Then the author moves to his own phase of social anxiety and how he was also a person who would not take risks. And then the author talks about how it's important to be careful in judging others and not accept beliefs on the face value. Otherwise, people can become slightly narcissistic, as he says, insidious narcissism. And this kind of narcissism is also uh, kind of supported by the language that we use. We don't usually separate ourselves from our feelings. We say, I am scared. We don't say, I'm feeling scared. And the popular culture that is going on around the world, advertisements and literature and political speeches, they tell you to go with your intuition, listen to your gut, follow your heart, live for today. I mean, seriously, if I listen to my heart, I would eat pizza for breakfast and have Coke for lunch and Coca-Cola, I mean, and these things. So these cliches pollute our atmosphere, according to the author. You may feel something for somebody, but that is not the exact definition of it because feelings can be transient, fleeting. Yeah. You feel very angry with somebody, next day you're absolutely okay with that person. So feelings are pretty transient, they are temporal, they are spatial. So that's what the main idea of the passage is. The author has taken up the style of writing is very metaphorical. Extremely metaphorical. He uses the metaphor of VCR, then he uses the metaphor of Rubik's Cube and enigmas and, you know, such things. The author also is a very, the writing style is also very colloquial. It has some slangs. Colloquial means something that is contemporary. He's not writing in old, archaic English. So, very colloquial in nature, again. And that's about it. I mean, it'll be really nice if you can go to the actual essay and read the entirety of it if you find time and if you're interested. It's a good read about risk taking. Yeah. So that's it for today, I guess. I'm going to meet you in the next episode. Take good care of yourselves. Bye bye.